Salvation Army, who I did like and who was very nice otherwise, found out that I was working at the bar. She told me that I had to quit, and went on to like a holier than now speech about how it was.
Hi guys, welcome back to Scream Queen Stream. I'm your host, Heather Dorff.
And I'm Jessica Cameron, and today we're going to be doing another hot tub story time, if you couldn't tell by the hot tub. Yay. Or by the fact that we're about to start telling stories.
So today we're going to be doing our worst boss, I guess, experience. And I actually haven't had that. I've only had one that was kind of bad, and even then I liked her to a point. But mine was, so my second job ever was at Movie Gallery. Seems appropriate, right? I wanted to work somewhere where I could get free rentals every week. It seemed like a good idea.
So it was like a Blockbuster.
Yeah, it was Blockbuster's like competitor at the time. It was a super fun job, like I said, because we did get free movies lead time from when they were released, and I don't know, it was just great. But the problem is I had the worst, like one of those like women bosses that have to prove a point, so they're extra mean and extra bossy and extra like tough and just over the top, just extra, straight up extra. She was mean, like she was straight up mean, and dealing with her on a daily basis was seriously a struggle. And also I'm just sort of like passive. I don't really love confrontation. And women in general have always been kind of a conundrum to me. So at first I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna last here, but I got hired and she liked me, and even though she gave me a hard time, she started really liking me. Like she started training me to be a manager, even though I was only 17. But she was just so hard to deal with, and she would just constantly give me shit and stuff. And also I had the weirdest customer complaints that weren't true. So for example, one customer said that I threw her card at her and told her to get the fuck out, that she couldn't rent from us. I mean, unless I'm schizophrenic and I just haven't figured it out yet, okay, I never did that. Another person said
it's also just not in tone with your personality, like at all.
No, and another person said he came in a wheelchair and he asked me for help, like to find a movie or something, like it was on a high shelf, and I told him to just fucking get it himself. And again, no. That has never. I don't know. Anyways, for whatever reason, I kept getting weird customer complaints. But again, my boss was just always really hard on me. She changed my schedule a lot. She asked me to do things that were out of like touch. I don't even remember what happened, but I was basically when I was working, I was the manager, so I worked different schedule than her mostly. Because when I was basically the front house manager when I was on site. That's where I got to within 6 months. And I can't remember what she did, but she called me one day when we were in the middle of a really busy fucking shift, and I can't remember what she asked me to do or what she was fucking bitching at me about or what, but what, I was basically just like, no. Her name was Terry. I will never forget, and she drove me nuts, and I was like, Terry, listen, like, this is it. Like, I can't deal with this shit anymore. Either, I told her, you know, I wasn't going to do whatever she asked. If she was going to make me do it, I was going to walk out right now. And she basically was like,
I asked you to do a lot of shit, and you never threatened to walk out.
I don't know what it was.
It must have been a lot.
It was something super bad, and it was just at my wit's end, basically. And she just, per Terry, like she always did, she just held firm, even though it was a ridiculous request. It was over the top, and I like literally like put down my badge and stuff, and I just walked out. I left that poor person there to deal with that madness by themselves. But either way, I straight up walked out. That's the only time I've ever quit a job like that, by the way, where I just walked out.
You can't, it's bad.
I know, you should never do that. It's horrible. But I was done with that bitch. And
I actually should clarify that this is jobs, so it's not actually acting jobs. We did decide to do that as a separate video, so if you are interested in that, comment down below.
Right. Yeah, so yeah, I had a horrible, bitchy, like the absolute, like, stereotypical bitchy woman boss lady that was a misery and bipolar. And yeah, and I straight up walked out of that job. I've never done that again. I've never dealt with anyone like that again. Yay! So yeah.
So my worst. So I will give, there's an honorable mention, but not because it was so tragic, to be fair. I just, at the end of the day, I thought it was questionable. I worked at the Salvation Army, ironically, because long story, I had community service, and they were like, oh my god, you're a great job, you're a great worker, we want to hire you. So that was my very first like official part-time job after babysitting when I was 15, 16, 17. I would work on, they were open late nights on Thursday, Friday, and then I do Saturday. So in the final year of my high school, they had closed down worked the late nights because they just weren't doing enough sales. So I was only working Saturday, and I'd actually started to work at a bar, and I was intending on leaving because I was working 5 nights a week at a bar, right? So literally every school day I was getting home pretty much at 3 in the morning, and I was waking up for 7:30 to get to class, right? So it was hectic. It was really stressful. So I was gonna quit, and the only reason why I didn't quit is because when my boss of the Salvation Army, who I did like and who was very nice otherwise, found out that I was working at the bar, she told me that I had to quit, and went on to like a holier than now speech about how it was immoral and unchristian of me to be working in a bar. And I was like, first of all, I know the law, and that's not true. And secondly, you can't fire me for having a second job. Thirdly, you should be encouraging me to have a second job because I was saving for my university. And it just pissed me off so much that for the next year, I literally worked there just for that reason alone. For like, I made nothing. And keep in mind, I was planning on quitting because it was like, it was so much less than what I made at the bar because it was minimum wage. So I think I'd work like 8 hours and make like $50 maybe before taxes.
Right.
And I literally, like, again, having to do that for like the 5th day in a row of like getting home at 3, waking up at 7:30 was so difficult to do it on like the one of the 2 days I didn't have to do it, that I was gonna quit. And out of spite, because I was like, you can't legally do that, and how dare you, there's nothing wrong with working at the bar and saving towards my education. And for the record, her daughter was at the bar fucking drinking and doing all kinds of questionable things with highly questionable people. So I was like, maybe you need to take that home and deal with whatever issues you have inside the house and leave me the fuck alone.
That's probably why she said it, honestly. That's probably why she was doing that.
Well, no, but then they also, furthermore, after that conversation where she tried to say it was unchristian, then she tried to get other coworkers to pressure me to say that there's other people that needed this job. And I was like, no, actually, nobody wants to work on a Saturday. Like, trust me, I see a lot of the applicants we get in, like, no.
Yeah, right.
First of all, if there was a lot of other people hiring, you wouldn't have hired, like, somebody who had been hired doing it because of community service who was 16 at the time. Like, if you could get a grown-up to do the same work with an actual history for minimum wage, you'd go with that grown-up. You wouldn't take that possible delinquent, you know, who was there by force. They took me because they're like, oh wow, you're a really hard worker and you'll take a minimum wage job because you were literally 15.
Right.
So that one gets honorable mention, but it's actually not my worst boss. My worst boss is a series of bosses, and it was at the fashion design company that I worked at after I got hired outside of university. For the first year, I had the most amazing boss. We're still friends. She's fantastic. And then she left because her bosses sucked, and she hated the subculture of the fashion company that I worked at. So the fashion design world is literally as catty and worse than any high school ever. Worse than any depiction I've ever seen in movies. It's so catty. It's bullshit. It's insane. The fact that it still functions that way is mind-boggling.
Right.
And I literally had these bosses, just a series of them. There was a few that were okay after my great one left at year 1, but one in particular, who I will not mention by name, was just hated everything about me. Like, I literally am the same person I was then, you know, except we weren't allowed to wear black, we weren't allowed to wear purple, I wasn't allowed to wear heels.
Okay.
So I had to wear flip-flops, had to wear jeans, had to wear t-shirts, no black, no purple. Other than that, I'm like the same person, and she would just write the most insane, stupid things in my reviews. And keep in mind, at this point, like, they had decided, and there's a reason why I know what my inside reviews, like between the higher-ups about me, look like. I won't get into it now, but I have insider knowledge of what they actually said. So I came to find out years after the fact that, like, the reviews for me that I didn't see, the reviews from, like, the higher-ups were like, she works better and harder than all of the normal people. We don't need to hire an extra person. We will just give her the extra workload and she will make sure it gets done. Like, literally shit like that is going on. While that's going on, I'm getting reviews that say ridiculous things. One of them that stands out to me was that I lacked sparkle.
I remember you saying this, yeah.
I still had the review until I, like, moved to LA, and then I got lost in the shuffle because I was like, I'm gonna fucking frame this. Because I was like, of all the people to lack sparkle, you have to understand, like, the person that's telling me this is, like, the least sparkly person ever, and I'm, like, just a sparkly person. But also, that's not actually something you can put on a review.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, you're supposed to put things that, like, you can measure, that are quantifiable, and that are things that are supposed to be related to your job. My job didn't require sparkle.
For you to be sparkly.
It had never added that, and also, so, like, for me, I was like, could you further define what it means to be sparkly? I would like quantitatable and qualifiable, like details on how do I achieve
goals,
this.
yeah, levels
like,
you can
it's
achieve.
not something that is like, it's not a thing. It's not a thing for a review. And I literally felt like I was being punked. I was like, I'm being pranked. She would literally keep me there all hours of the night. So I would be working from like 8 or 9 in the morning, rarely before 9, let's just keep it real. But sometimes as early as 8, but at the latest 9, till many nights, midnight, 1 a.m. And she would have me there like 5 and 6 hours past a normal work time, correcting patterns within a 1/16 of an inch. And if you don't know what a 1/16 of an inch is, it's literally like the width of a pencil tip.
Right.
And also we were doing knit fabrics. So even if you want to argue from a fashion design standard that 1/16 of an inch counts on a woven, a knit has X amount of stretch. So our give, right, on patterns when the factory does it, because we do measurements and we can make sure that they're within line, was typically 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 of an inch, depending upon the measurement position. Like if it was a length, it was a half. It's like a chest, it's 1/4. So again, we're already giving them 1/4 of an inch because it's not a big deal if it changes. So the fact that I would be there for like 30-40 hours and over a normal work week correcting patterns within a 1/16 of an inch, and it was honestly just a power play. Like, that's the thing, this woman was just like hateful and spiteful. And like literally I would be like in HR, because like the people that were doing half the workload of me that had been there the same length of time at me would get promoted before me like every time. And I think it was just a combination of, they're like, you don't fit the brand. And like, and again, like admittedly I wasn't like the most brand type person. I loved high heels. They did have to tell me I wasn't allowed to wear them. I like wearing black. They did have to tell me I wasn't allowed to wear it. But still, based on actual work output, I was really on point, and it was never reflected in anything. And she just literally looked for anything, any reason to like keep me there, extended hours for no reason, make my life miserable. There was like literally people where I would like double check their patterns and everything would be wrong, and I'm like, you didn't give them a hard time and this stuff is wrong, and yet you're like having me spend hours correcting to a 1/16 of an inch. Like, that's insane. And also, again, not fair comparable when you're like, these other people who are doing less work, who leave at a decent time, have patterns that are just like wrong. Like, that measurement is like 3/8 of an inch off. That actually matters.
Right.
So there's that. And then like after her, I got a guy who was also just this weird high school guy, and he just hated everything. He would like take credit for my ideas, and it was just a complete nightmare. So yeah, that was my worst boss experience.
Don't work in the fashion world, y'all.
Right? It's funny, people talk about how our industry, the film world, is really catty and really, you know, juvenile and high schoolish, and it's nothing compared to
Hospitality is like that too. Most work environments are a little bit that.
I worked in hospitality. I never experienced this level. They're so catty.
Well,
they're
yeah,
all, like because keep in mind too, like they're so focused on like making. They would like pick the people they'd want to keep down, and they'd want to, because like if you could be a threat, or like if you were smarter or better at your job, or like again, because I was handling so much workload, I would have been a good candidate to like excel and go up the charts. So like for the most part, the most amount of bosses I had were like, no, we have to keep her down, because again. It looks good if I'm the person helping her to achieve this great workload. It's bad if they realize she's just doing it on her own and she doesn't need me as her boss if she could do my job, which effectively I was doing. And also because like I was the one who'd fight for people's rights. So that's the other thing, which I think a lot of them didn't do, is I remember like my underling, who I won't mention by name, but she didn't fit the stereotypical appearance by race or style. And nobody wanted to promote her. And I was like, you have to fucking promote her. Like, she's great. We have to look at her work. And they would always give me like BS excuses as to why they didn't. I was like, but that's not a real excuse. Like, objectively looking at her work, you've promoted so many people who are less qualified than she is. Look at her work. You have to promote her. And I was like one who like stood up constantly. And ironically, as soon as I left that corporation, so did everybody else below me, because they're like, we can't handle this without you. It's just too much. And I was like, yeah, it's because like the people above were just horrible human beings.
Right.
Honestly, I still don't know how you sleep at night. So there's that. So don't forget to comment down below with your favorite worst boss stories.
Yes, hopefully you don't have any. But if you do, let us know what they are.
Yeah.
And as always, please remember to like, subscribe, and share.
And also, don't forget to hit up that Patreon, because YouTube hates us and we make no money from it at all, ever.
Ever. Forever.
For real.
So thank you guys. Have a good one.
Bye.
Thank you so much for checking out Scream Queen Stream. We hope you loved it as much as we do.
If you want to see more of our videos, check out our YouTube page. And while you're there, how about you subscribe? You want to see more? Just tweet us. Find us on Facebook. Join in on the fun. And most importantly, if you really want to join us on this crazy ride, check out our Patreon page and become a patron for amazing, awesome perks that we give out monthly.
As well as early access to all of our videos.
Free giveaways.
And a whole lot more fun shit.
So check it out.
We'll see you there.
Stay bloody.
You stole my tagline.
I did.
You're a horrible friend.